The desert had a way of making a man forget what normal felt like. Sergeant Marcus Hale had spent 14 months in the kind of heat that warped the air above, the sand into liquid mirages, where the sun didn't rise so much as it detonated every morning at 5:30. 14 months of MREs and satellite calls that dropped at the worst moments, of sleeping in 60-second intervals whenever the base went quiet, of writing letters he never sent, because he didn't know what to say to people whose lives had kept moving while his had been frozen, inside a forward operating base surrounded by concertina wire. He hadn't told anyone he was coming home early. It wasn't planned exactly. The orders came down on a Wednesday, a rotation reshuffling, some administrative decision made by someone who'd never set foot in country, and suddenly Marcus had 72 hours to pack his kit, process out, and board a military transport to Germany, then a commercial flight back to the States. He'd sat in the Frankfurt airport for 9 hours with his duffel, between his boots and his phone in his hand, staring at his contacts list, thumb hovering over names. Mom, his sister, Danny, his girlfriend, Priya, who technically wasn't his girlfriend anymore. She'd ended things at month 9. Through a voice message, he'd listened to 47 times, trying to find the part where it made sense. And then there was Derek Calloway, his roommate of 3 years. His best friend since sophomore year of college, when they'd ended up in the same Introduction to Criminal Justice class and spent the entire lecture arguing about a case study the professor had put on the board. They'd grabbed lunch after and hadn't stopped, talking for approximately 1,000 days straight. Marcus didn't text Derek either. He told himself it was because he wanted to surprise everyone. That felt cleaner than the real reason, which was that he was afraid, genuinely, quietly terrified, that walking back into his old life would feel like trying to wear clothes that no longer fit, that he'd open the front door and find a version of himself that no longer existed, waiting. On the other side, the cab ride from the airport took 40 minutes. Marcus watched the city blur past the window and felt nothing at first, then felt everything at once, the particular green of the trees in late May, a color that didn't exist anywhere he'd been for the past year, and a McDonald's with a hand-painted sign in the window that said, "Welcome back, Warriors," and a middle school soccer game on a field that was so perfectly, aggressively ordinary that he had to look away. He paid the driver in cash and stood on the sidewalk in front of the apartment building with his duffel at his feet. The building was exactly the same. Of course it was. 3 floors of red brick with a fire escape that they'd once climbed at 2 in the morning to watch a thunderstorm roll across the skyline, sharing a thermos of terrible instant coffee because neither of them could sleep. The little mailbox by the door still had Marcus's name on it, slightly crooked, the way Derek had taped it up the day Marcus had moved in. He'd done a deliberately bad job because he said straight. Mailbox labels were for people with no personality. Marcus picked up his duffel and went inside. He climbed the stairs slowly, not from exhaustion, but because he didn't want to rush whatever was waiting at the top. Their apartment was 2B, second floor, end of the hall, the unit with the window that faced east, so the morning light came in hard and gold and beautiful and also completely merciless. If you'd slept past 7, he stood at the door for a long moment, key in hand. Then he let himself in. The apartment was quiet. Late afternoon, maybe 4:30. Derek would be home from work by now usually. Marcus stepped inside and stood in the entryway, taking it in. The same battered leather couch they'd hauled up 3 flights of stairs in 90-degree heat. The bookshelf that leaned slightly to the left, no matter what they did to fix it. The kitchen with the cabinet above the stove that never fully closed, always hanging just an inch or two open, which had driven Marcus insane before he'd shipped out and now looked, inexplicably, like something he'd missed. There were new things, too. A plant on the windowsill, an actual living plant, which was remarkable given that Derek had once killed a succulent. A framed photo on the wall next to the TV. Marcus walked over to look at it. It was a picture of the 2 of them. College graduation. They were grinning like idiots in their caps and gowns. Marcus's arm thrown around Derek's shoulders. He had no memory of anyone taking it. He heard footsteps in the hallway. The bedroom door opened, and Derek walked out in sweatpants and a faded university t-shirt, hair still damp from a shower, towel in one hand, phone in the other. He didn't look up immediately. He was reading something on his screen, half distracted the way a person moves through their own space when they believe they're alone in it. Then he looked up. For a second, just one suspended. Crystalline second, Derek's face went completely blank. Not surprise, not recognition, just a total absence of expression. The face of a man whose brain had received information it couldn't immediately process. Then he said it. 4 words. "You're supposed to be gone." Marcus felt it land somewhere in his chest. Not painfully, but deeply the way a sound you've been waiting for lands, differently than you expect. Richer than the anticipation, more real. He laughed first. Then Derek crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed him. And they did that thing men do when they're too proud to admit they're emotional. The hard backslapping. The grip that's a little too tight to be casual. Both of them saying something at the same time that neither of them could hear. "What are you? How are you? When did—" Derek stepped back and looked at him, doing this rapid up and down scan like he was checking for damage. "You're supposed to be there until August. Orders changed. You didn't call." "I know." Derek looked at him for another long moment. "You look terrible." "Thanks, man." "No, I mean—" Derek shook his head and something shifted in his expression. Something softer, less guarded. "I mean, you look tired. Really tired." "I am," Marcus said. "I'm really, really tired." That was the truest thing he'd said in 14 months. Derek ordered pizza, the specific place they'd always ordered from, the one with the garlic, knots that Marcus had apparently mentioned in no fewer than 4 separate satellite calls over the past year without realizing it, which Derek had logged in his brain like case evidence. They sat on the leather couch that still had the same cushion indent, on the left side that it had always had, and they ate and they talked. Not about the deployment, not at first. About smaller things. Derek's job, a promotion he'd been chasing that had finally come through. A family thing Marcus had missed. His sister's engagement, which Danny had apparently announced at Thanksgiving while Marcus had been 3,000 miles away, eating a holiday MRE. The plant on the windowsill was named Gerald, Derek said without a trace of irony, and Gerald had survived 8 months, which was a personal record. The picture on the wall. Derek had found the photo in a box while he was cleaning out the closet. He'd framed it because the apartment felt too empty otherwise. He didn't say it like it was a significant statement. He said it the way people tell the truth when they're not making a performance of it. At some point, the pizza was gone, and the room had gotten dark outside the windows, and neither of them had moved to turn on a light. "You should have called," Derek said. Not accusing, just saying. "I know. I would have picked you up from the airport." "I know that too." Derek was quiet for a moment. "Why didn't you?" Marcus thought about Frankfurt, about his thumb hovering over Derek's name on his phone, about the fear he hadn't been willing to name out loud until now, in the dark of a familiar apartment, with garlic knot grease on his fingers, and a couch beneath, him that still knew the shape of him. "I was scared it wouldn't feel the same," he said. Derek didn't say anything right away. He turned that over the way he always had. Derek, who'd studied criminal justice, who'd become a detective, who understood that silence was sometimes the most useful tool in any room. "Does it?" he asked finally. Marcus looked around the apartment, the leaning bookshelf, the plant named Gerald, the framed photograph, the cabinet above the stove, still hanging open exactly 1 inch. "Better," Marcus said. "It feels better." He slept on the couch that night, not because there wasn't a bed available, but because the couch was exactly the right level of familiar. Derek left a blanket on the armrest without saying anything about it, the way a person does when they've been waiting to do something useful for 14 months and have finally gotten the chance. Marcus lay in the dark and listened to the building settle, the distant sound of traffic, a neighbor's TV through the wall. He wasn't in the desert. He wasn't anywhere between places. He was home. Actually, completely, unmistakably home. And the first words his best friend had said to him, "You're supposed to be gone," had been the most honest welcome he could have asked for, because they meant, "You exist in my world even when you're absent from it. You have a place here. I know when that place is empty." He fell asleep before 10 o'clock. He slept until 9 the next morning. It was the longest, most uninterrupted sleep he'd had in 14 months, and when he woke up, Derek had already made coffee. Real coffee. Not instant. And had left a mug on the table beside him without waking him up. Still warm. Marcus sat up and wrapped both hands around it and didn't say a word. Some things didn't need words. Some things you just came home to,